What is the most thing you've witnessed during school or on school grounds? Story 1. I went to high school in a very rural part of Pennsylvania. The seniors were allowed to drive to school and would get there early and hang out in the parking lot before homeroom. Well, one day, a huge buck comes strutting into the parking lot. A couple of the redneck kids decide that they're going to it. So they get this deer cornered against the school, and I swear on all things, this freaking deer jumps through a window and into a classroom. They don't let anyone in the school and call the cops and game wardens to get this thing out of there. Meanwhile, it's bleeding everywhere because of the glass. So after about 45 minutes, they finally get a hold of it and take it outside where it runs as fast as it can towards the woods. However, there's the main road through town before you get to the woods. As it's crossing the street, it gets hit by a car. I guess it was a bad day to be a deer. Story 2. Massive fight in front of school. Kid gets hatchet axe out of car and lifts it above his head to hit the other kid on the ground and probably end him. Principal takes axe out of kid's hand and knocks him with the back end of the axe, basically saving the other kid's life. This happened in 1988, and that guy is still principal. He was in his early 30s back then. Story 3. Our school bully, nasty piece of work, we'll call C, ripped the wig off a new student, A, who had recently returned from cancer treatment. They got into it, and A was suspended despite multiple witnesses. We suspect even the teachers were slightly scared of C. Next day, as we were leaving, A was waiting outside for the doors to open, comes straight in, grabs C's hair, slams her head into a locker, then proceeds to pull a huge pair of scissors and violently chops off as much hair as she can before the teachers intervene. She was obviously expelled, but man, she's still my hero. Bully C was definitely put in her place after that, and absolutely toned down her torment of everyone else. Wish I knew what became of A. Edit. As some people were asking about what happened to C and A, and I'd like to clarify those are not their names, but I called some old friends tonight to see what we could dig up. We do not know superhero A's last name, so no info sadly, but I'd like to think she's doing amazing. On to the bully. So there is a reason I couldn't pull up any current info on her, and as I suspected, she did pass away in 2003. This is not cause for celebration, as from what I gleaned from old friends, it was a suspected drug overdose. She wasn't a kind person by any means, but she was also dealt a pretty shitty hand, and I feel sad for her and those that loved her. Doesn't excuse her behavior at aged 14 to 17, but I have no interest in bashing her. She was a terror, but she was a product of her environment and didn't stand a chance to make a better life for herself. She died alone, aged 26. Wow, what a roller coaster of emotions that story was. It's heartbreaking to hear about A's experience with the school bully C. It's even more disheartening to know that A was suspended despite multiple witnesses to the incident. It's a shame that sometimes school authorities fail to provide a safe environment for students. But it's interesting to hear about what happened to C and A after the incident. While we may never know what became of A, it's sad to hear that C passed away at such a young age. We can all take this as a sobering reminder that we never know what someone else may be going through, and it's important to treat others with kindness and compassion, even if they may not deserve it. Rest in peace, C. Story 4. My friend brought stink bombs to school, the ones that inflate with pressure, and gave one to me and kept one for himself. Before school started, we were playing on the playground, and just as I'm about to go line up, I check my backpack, and mine was inflated. I quickly throw that as far away as I could. Some native kids ran over there and started stomping on it, thinking it was funny. Before mine went off, I kicked my friend's backpack, and his started inflating as well. He threw his as far out as well. Some more kids went over to stomp on his. Both blew up, and about 10 to 15 kids had to go home because they stunk so bad. My buddy and I got suspended for a month. Ha ha ha. Story 5. I had a friend that was allergic to so many things, he had to eat the same thing every day that he brought from home. I literally mean every day for years. He had a very bad day, failed a test, Some things happened at home. We met up at lunch and he had 2 slices of pepperoni pizza. He said, "Today seems like a good day to die," and proceeded to wolf down both slices. I had never seen him so happy. I walked him to the nurse's office as he ballooned up. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks. He never regretted the decision. Well, that's one way to go out with a bang. It's impressive that your friend was able to resist temptation for so long, but I guess there's only so much a person can take. I can just imagine the joy on his face as he indulged in that forbidden pizza. Even if it did land him in the hospital for 2 weeks, at least he went out on his own terms and with a full stomach. Story 6. We were in 4th grade, and class just let out for a 5-minute break. I was with a group of girls, and we walked into the bathroom. On the far wall was a giant ring of painted in the shape of a heart. There was even visible, undisguised food in the faces that, for some reason, is burned into my memory. There was kind of a witch hunt. The principal called out students in the hallway one by one to question the kids. No one confessed, as far as I remember, but there was a lot of suspicion surrounding a boy who liked to talk about and flatulence. I'm not even sure that he did it, but too many jokes in class, and something like this happens, you are suspect number 1. Story 7. It's a long story, but I'll try to make it quick. A guy followed my friends and me from middle school and idled when we stopped walking. We had to split up. Seems weird, but not too weird. We chat for a while. The guy never leaves the car. I realize that the windows, even the driver's side one, is tinted, which is illegal in my state. We talk for 15 plus minutes. He doesn't move. I pull out my cell phone to tell my mom I'm going to be late. The guy peels away, and that's when we noticed he had no plates. To make it worse, my best friend was going to walk 4 blocks to her empty house because her dad didn't come home till 5, and she barely weighs 110 pounds. I have no doubt she would have been abducted if I hadn't taken out my phone. Edit. For all the people asking if I told my parents, I did. Eventually, years later, my mom was really freaked out when I told her. She's a psychotherapist, and her specialty is the family members of murder victims. Why didn't I tell anyone? Because I never connected the dots until years later. My best friend, the one whose dad came home late, didn't even remember it. I just pushed it to the back of my mind as a weird thing, until a guy who drove a very similar car exposed himself to my cousin in the adjacent neighborhood. Now that I'm older, I have more of an awareness of all the terrible things that happen to kids. In retrospect, it should have been more obvious that something was wrong, especially since my parents were always clear to stay away from strangers. The thing I think we need to learn from this is to educate kids to stay together and keep a cell phone with them. I have also learned basic cell defense, and I always carry a whistle with me just in case. That's a scary experience, and it's even scarier to think that it could have ended much worse if you hadn't taken out your phone. It's understandable why you didn't connect the dots at the time, but it's fortunate that you were able to realize the danger later on. It's important to educate kids about staying safe and being aware of their surroundings, and carrying a cell phone and other safety tools can definitely help. It's unfortunate that we live in a world where we have to take these precautions, but it's better to be safe than sorry, right? Thanks for sharing your story and spreading awareness. Story 8. A girl was coming back from a doctor's appointment and wasn't there to hear that we couldn't get out equipment for recess. She opened the door, grabbed something, and went to leave. The wind kicked up and slammed the door on her hand, and she lost a finger. They rushed her to the hospital and they sewed it back on, and eventually it was back to normal. But that was the most thing I had seen. Reply 1. I actually remember that happening to someone in the daycare my mom put me in. Needless to say, I didn't stay in that daycare for very long. Story 9. A girl had diarrhea and was wearing tights and sitting in class, and the tights started getting really, really lumpy, but she didn't get up to go to the bathroom. Reply 1. Gotta wait to move slick and sly with the crowd, so when it runs down your leg, you can kind of shake it off since there's less suspicion of who it came from. Who's gonna check or notice if I my pants while in the crowded hallway, right? As you briskly walk to the locker room before anyone else, and then hide in that bathroom until the bell rang. And then wait until everyone leaves so you can safely change out of your mud diaper and dispose of the evidence. Can't say I've ever been in that situation, but I get it. Kinda strange to know so much about something that apparently never happened to you, nor you've ever done. You are kinda sus, not gonna lie. Story 10. When I was 8, we were making cookies in class, and they gave us square cheese graters to make chocolate chips with, because they didn't trust us with knives. A fair judgment. Some kid was holding a few graters and pretended to be a robot. This girl shouted at him because he wasn't a robot and proceeded to take one of the graters and grate his hand. Some kids are just weird, and I still can't figure out to this day why he did it. Story 11. When I was in 10th grade, I was friends with an 11th grader we'll call Doug. Doug was a seriously damaged dude. Lots of family issues, he was currently in foster care, etc. We had basically become friends through a mutual friend, but got on really well. He was this tall kid with a mohawk and piercings, and people were sort of intimidated by him. I was top of my class, captain of the debate team, on the academic squad, etc. It was a weird friendship. Anyway, Doug had a best friend, another girl who was equally and damaged, and they loved each other. Not romantically, but the way that people who truly have no one else who gets it love each other. So we're sitting in biology one morning, the only class we had together, when there is an announcement. Doug's best friend offed herself the night before. The class goes totally silent, and you can feel the air shift as everyone turns to look at him. There is this pause, like when someone is teetering on an edge and you are waiting to see if it falls. It fell. He went completely nuts, flinging desks over, hurling beakers and shit. The teacher hustles everyone out into the hallway. He's pulling me out the door as I'm begging him to let me go back and try to talk to Doug. I slipped back in as he was turning to call the office. I just sort of stood there while Doug continued rampaging. He sort of got near me, and I reached out and put my hand on his shoulder. By the time the school resource officer and everyone else got there, I had him in the corner of a couple lab tables, laying in my lap, just sobbing. Fortunately, our SRO was actually a really kind lady, and rather than bust in all, "He's a danger, blah, 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 blah," she very kindly asked me to ask him to walk to the office so we could sit and talk. She let me stay with him the whole time. It honestly might have been the first time I realized just how badly life can suck, how badly it can kick people and just roll over them. Yeah, it's amazing how sometimes the people who seem the toughest on the outside are actually the ones who are hurting the most on the inside. It's heart-wrenching to think about what Doug and his best friend must have been going through to lead to such a tragic event, but it's also inspiring to hear about your compassion and bravery in trying to reach out and comfort him during such a difficult time. It's moments like these that truly show the power of empathy and human connection. Story 12. I worked at an American school in China a while back. One day, one of the school buses was on the way to campus from the city, and there was an accident that students saw. A truck ran over a man riding his bicycle. The students on the bus witnessed the accident and watched that poor man laying on the road. They were stuck in traffic and couldn't get away from the horrific scene for over 20 minutes. Kids were crying and were very traumatized afterwards. Most of them were elementary school students. There was a lot of grief counseling in the months after that. Story 13. A 15-year-old girl smashing another girl's head into the side of a bus while a bunch of other people filmed it on phones. Reason given for the head smashing? The second girl started dating a boy the first one split up with several years before. Edit. Since it's been brought up a lot, yes, the first girl and the boy started dating when they were 12 or so, and it only lasted a couple of months at most. This isn't uncommon where I grew up. What in the actual is wrong with some people? I mean, seriously, smashing someone's head into a bus because they started dating an ex from several years ago? That's not just messed up, that's straight up psychotic. And to make it worse, a bunch of people just stood around filming it on their phones instead of trying to stop it. What is happening to our society? Story 14. Back in high school, I watched a kid get tased my 7th grade year. He was a very obnoxious 8th grade kid. Stood on top of a table in the cafeteria one morning and started doing pelvic thrusts. One of the teachers who happened to be around walked over and told him to stop. He hit her and she proceeded to chase that idiot around until he dove under the table and got away from her. He ran straight into the school resource officer. He then proceeded to punch the SRO in the gut pretty hard and bolted for the cafeteria door. SRO followed in hot pursuit. I went out to the hall to see what happened, and when I ran around the corner, there he was on his after being tased. I would do anything to be able to witness the entire thing once again. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.